As members of the Global Farmer Network,
we believe agriculture is part of the solution,
not part of the problem.
We are committed to developing agricultural leaders
and sharing their stories across the globe.
We have one purpose:
to amplify the farmer's voice.
My voice.
Mi voz.
La mia voce.
My voice.
Welcome to Global Farmer Voices, a podcast by the Global Farmer Network, where we invite farmers from around the world to share their stories and perspectives. Hello, I'm Delaney Howell, host for this podcast series. Kristjan Hebert, an innovative Canadian farmer, found himself switching career paths and taking a road less traveled by many of his Canadian farmer counterparts. After starting his career as a CPA, he eventually left that role temporarily to pursue his passion for farming in 2009. Little did he know at the time that his work as a CPA would come back around full circle as he eventually co-launched a second business. We have an action-packed episode ahead, learning more about Kristjan's background and farm, how to go about goal setting, planning new strategies, and getting ready for 2024, and learn more about his second business as an entrepreneur. Then to wrap everything up, we're going to look at the upcoming United Nations COP28 event. So let's dig in. We have a lot to cover. Known today as the breadbasket of Canada, Saskatchewan is a hub for farming and agriculture, where modern technology and cutting-edge techniques are met by farmers ready to optimize and use those techniques. Among them is Kristjan and his family. Since his move back to the family farm, Hebert Grain Ventures, Kristjan has expanded the family farm from 4,000 acres to now a whopping 30,000 acres, leveraging opportunities, relationships with other farmers, and making smart financial management decisions. Today, Hebert Grain Ventures grows three main crops: malting barley, hard red spring wheat, and canola. They also grow some yellow peas, oats, and fall rye.
Yeah, no, when I was growing up, in I'd say the late 90s is when I was in high school, and we'd have been 2,500 acres and had 200 or 300 cows and 1,500 head in a feedlot. And then, so I graduated in 2000, kind of rented some land with Dad while I was going to university. So I moved home in 2004, and I think we'd have been in that, 3,500 to 4,000 range, somewhere around there. And then, which wasn't quite big enough for two families. So I actually did my CPA with one of the big accounting firms in Canada. I say I'm a recovering accountant now, so an entrepreneur with some accounting skills. So in 08, 09 is kind of when we decided to really start growing. So between 04 being 3,500 acres and 2023 being 30,000, that's the time frame. The last 10 years have really been our biggest growth. Kind of once we got our team and our processes a little more defined is when we started to grow a lot quicker. As to be honest though, it's just as opportunities come at us. We've never went looking for growth. We've just always had a door open to growth. So as opportunities come, we assess them, and the ones that work we take on, and the ones that don't we say no to.
Kristjan is not only passionate about his farm, but he's also a farmer turned entrepreneur, which we'll get to a little later here in the episode. He says the keys to his success have been pursuing those passions, surrounding himself with talented individuals, and delivering quality work. Because of this, Kristjan has earned a respected reputation in the industry, which has helped him to find new opportunities to grow the farm.
I always say that I'm just addicted to the game of farming and of business. And the reason I say that is I played hockey, but I don't care if we're talking hockey or football. When we were young, nobody had to pay us to get up to go to practice at 6:30 on a Saturday morning or sleep in hotels and be in tournaments all weekend. We did it because we really loved it. And I'm just lucky enough that that's kind of the way I feel about farm business and farming. And we just happen to make money at it too, which is even better, right? So I think if you do what you love and try to do a good job of it and surround yourself with really good people, then opportunities tend to follow that, because they're not just coming to you, they're coming to your team, and they're maybe coming to a neighbor who knows you better. And so as I said, we've always had our door open to growth. Our whole area knows that, if they're looking to rent or sell land, we're probably interested, especially if it's close to or touches something we farm. And then we have a bunch of what I would call innovative ways to help other farmers or investors kind of semi-retire. So whether you want to rent some land or sell your equipment and then I get rid of it, or joint venture farm for 2 or 3 years. We've used 5 or 6 different models to kind of get to where we are, and all of them fit our model, but we just work with the other side and kind of what allows them move from full-time farming and retirement.
Kristjan's business philosophy is all about finding the right balance, like a three-legged stool. That three-legged stool consists of cash flow, equity, and time. He focuses on balancing this stool constantly and finds that delegating tasks effectively, asking for help, and constantly finding ways to improve the business and become more efficient have really helped his farming operation. He, like so many other Global Farmer Network members, is focused on continual growth and always finding new areas to learn and improve his skill set.
I have a really simple business philosophy, and it's pretty hillbilly, but I think business is just a three-legged stool, and your business is the seat, and then the 3 legs are just time, brains, and money. And so you can't really have any of those legs any shorter than the other. The stool starts to tip, right? So money, everyone understands. If you have bad cash flow and bad equity, business doesn't work. So then the other one is time and brains. And brains, though, is really just people. So find people that are way better than you at a whole bunch of jobs and give them a good location on your team and pay them well to do it, right? And then time is our most important asset. So there's only a few ways to buy time, and one, that's with people, because you only have an allocated amount of people. And I always like to joke you can buy time with planes, but they're pretty expensive. But it all started with that philosophy. So then I go to a coach in Toronto called Strategic Coach, and it's a group of entrepreneurs, and I kind of found that all issues are the same in every business, and really kind of came up with the philosophy that I was always just going to find really good people to join our team, and then we'd go find the work after. And that included, I hired my COO when I was 71 or 7,200 acres, right? Way before anybody would have thought I should have one. And if anybody knew what I paid him at the time, they'd have called me a lunatic, right? But at the same time, he was here with us when we grew from 7 to 16,000. So he was at full stride by the time we went from 16 to 30. He was completely in charge, basically, of all HR and day-to-day operations. And I was able to work on strategy and purchasing and, mission and vision and capital and all the stuff I needed to work on. And kind of did the same thing with Evan, who's my CFO. I mean, I hired him probably way before I needed a CFO. I mean, I'm a chartered accountant, so I'm a farm with 2 CPAs on staff. And then the first people that Evan got to work for him, he trained at the accounting firm. So we're pretty deep in technical knowledge. But we filled that time with some really good consulting clients that we can provide value to, but also we can learn a lot from. And then obviously launched Farmer Coach, which allows us to once again share curriculum or education on mistakes we've made and templates we've made. But at the same time, we get to learn from the industry and learn from data to make us better too. So I would say it's just that philosophy of when you have a chance to hire good people, you just hire them and then find work. And I think in agriculture, we do that opposite a lot of times. We find the work or we expand, and then we hire warm bodies and then wonder why we're frustrated.
Kristjan's forward-looking approach uses a very specific business framework called EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which allows companies to boost productivity and stay organized. He says that by setting clear goals for the farm and his employees, implementing effective processes, and improving communication, businesses can streamline their operations and achieve long-term success. Similarly, farmers can benefit from setting achievable milestones by breaking down goals, monitoring progress, managing their resources effectively, and staying motivated and accountable. This helps them adapt and thrive in the dynamic agricultural landscape.
Well, I think personally, we like to think you need to look out 10 years. I mean, go back, even go as far as 25 years, that's 100 quarters, but at a minimum, go out 10 years and think of kind of a direction of which you want to go. Because we can get a lot more done in 10 years than we think we can. So we tend to always overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we really underestimate what we can in 10 years. And so, we start with kind of a picture of where we want to be in 10, and then we back that off to a 3-year plan. And then that obviously breaks right down into your individual quarters to get there. So if this is where I want to be in 3 years, what do I need to get done in the next 90 days to get there? And once you break that down into your bite-sized pieces and start sharing that with your team, we found the only thing we're bad at is maybe not setting big enough goals. as I said, once you can kind of get that vision and get it broke down into quarters and then really get your team to understand where you're trying to go and how they can influence that, we've just realized that we can accomplish probably way more than we first originally thought when your team all starts pulling in the same direction and culture really grows around that. So, that's how we go about planning, and it's kind of the suggestions that we make to others, and then we go through kind of the mistakes we've made that we wish we'd have done a lot better 15 or 20 years ago.
Kristjan started to recognize during those early years as a CPA that not all farms and farmers look the same. Some are smaller stakeholder farmers with less than 1 hectare or 2.5 acres, and some are as big as hundreds of thousands of acres. But all farmers can learn how to use a framework like EOS to help guide their businesses.
If you're super small and it's just you and your wife, you got to find time, to actually sit down and set those goals for the business, not for your life, right? Separate life and business. And I think when we get too big, we forget the importance of kind of making sure everyone on our team has a number. I mean, you go back to the traction book where customer satisfaction is one of the major goals, and the secretary having the goal that the phone's always answered in 2 rings or less with a smile, how it's a direct correlation to customer satisfaction. So how do we break that down on a farm, right? So, I mean, a couple of our goals in seeding and harvest are always we seed in 20 days and we harvest in 40 days. Well, then how do we break that down to our operators and our mechanics? And I'll use our mechanic as an example. I mean, one of the ideas that came out of it is we bought sea cans that are on trailers now. And he pre-purchases all the parts we used last year, so that basically we don't end up at the dealership hardly at all. We fix everything live in the field. And that really has taken our downtime to almost nothing and allows us to hit our 40-day goal. So it's communicating it down to the people that actually have to do everything every day, which is hopefully not you all the time.
Kristjan has previously been quoted as saying he's helping make Saskatchewan the Silicon Valley of agriculture. And he's going about it first and foremost by building strong relationships and connections. This has allowed him to gain valuable insights, learn from other industry experts, and stay updated on advancements in the industry.
I mean, I think most opportunities just come out of great relationships. I mean, I had a mentor in Danny Kleinfelter that passed away a few months ago, and I've got to know Kip Tom really well too. And I was humbled by the two of them to ask me to sit on an advisory board, albeit well over a decade ago now, for Granular in San Francisco. So I spent quite a bit of time there with that crowd and with a bunch of the VCs and kind of seeing how they did their work. And to be honest, at first I was like, how are they going to help me learn anything about farming? But as a side note, Mark Andreessen grew up on a dairy farm. So that was pretty interesting. But it really let me know that the way they innovate and the way they raise capital is pretty interesting. And that a lot of them want to test their products in Saskatchewan or in Western Canada, just like in the plains in the US. And yet very little of the money was here. They need the acres for their product, but none of the money was here. So I sit on a couple advisory boards for some ag tech funds that have started in Saskatchewan. And obviously we test a lot of products on our farm here, but it's just trying to, I think my overall vision is that I think there is more opportunities in the industry of agriculture than almost any industry out there. And our biggest opportunity, though, is to tell the story of how we can be the solution to many of the problems the world currently has. But then it goes back to my simple thing of time, brains, and money. And yet a lot of the brains and the money that we need in agriculture to be the solution isn't anywhere near us. It's in San Francisco and kind of follows the old farming's pretty easy if you're in an ivory tower using an Excel spreadsheet. And I want it, I partner with people that have dirt under their fingernails every now and then. I'm not saying all the time because I don't either all the time, but the more of that we can have kind of headquartered and in the plains and in Western Canada, I think the more efficient and more accurate we can have some of this technology get implemented. I think agriculture has the ability to be the solution to a whole bunch of things. I mean, the world's worried about climate. We can be the solution to that. The world's worried about where everybody's going to work in the future as AI starts to remove some jobs. Agriculture's looking for people. But the one thing us and society's done a pretty bad job of is making sure people still live in rural US and rural Canada. So I think part of our job in agriculture is, sustainability is leaving your financial statements, your land, and your community in a better state generation after generation. Because if our communities aren't in a good spot, our land and financial statements are going to be in horrible spots because nobody's going to be here to do the work. And so I think it needs to be part of all of agriculture's long-term vision of, what is the rural revitalization plan? Because we're a big part of that. And we need to tell that story and force governments and big companies to realize that if they want us to continue to spend a lot of money on combines and fertilizer and taxes, we expect them to reinvest in rural areas, not just in their headquarters.
Now, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, Kristjan is not only a farmer, but also an entrepreneur. A few years ago, Kristjan and his CFO, Evan, co-founded Farmer Coach. After traveling the world and speaking with various farmers and agricultural groups, the pair started to receive a lot of questions about how to actually implement some of the financial and business methods they discussed at their events. After doing a little more research, they recognized there wasn't a true community for farmers to learn and grow the financial and business side of their operations.
So I'm the kind of president of Maverick Ag that launched Farmer Coach. Evan, or I don't know if it's president, we co-founded it. Evan does all the work, to be honest. So Evan's my CFO and runs Maverick Ag. He runs Farmer Coach. Really, to be honest, I go to Strategic Coach and I went to TPAP down in the US that Danny Kleinfelter put on. And so it's kind of a combination of those two things and things I wish the industry had. And Evan and I talked about it lots before he left the accounting firm to come join our teams and co-found Maverick. And so it really, my only job is to create curriculum, i.e. I have to make sure we have enough new stuff coming through the pipeline that Evan then turns it into curriculum and shows everybody else better ways to do it than we do it. Because obviously I got a little bit of ADHD, so I can be a bit chaotic sometimes. So it takes some cleanup before everyone else, including my own team, can use. But it was just something we wish the industry had when we were kind of growing fast. And also, as Evan and I do some public speaking, we were a lot of follow-up requests. And once I talk about time all the time, if you're going to do individual follow-up, your time fills up really fast and you can't really help big groups of people. So that's where Farmer Coach fit in. We could have groups of 20 or 25 and work with them all at once. But secondly, it was just us being humble and realizing that a lot of good ideas just come from peers. And we weren't getting enough peers under a certain kind of template in the same room working and talking together. So we always talk that, business is just a big puzzle and you just borrow or steal pieces from everybody else in order to make the picture you want. And so we kind of give them the frame of the puzzle as Farmer Coach, but then really it's their group work and meeting great people that they decide on the individual pieces to make it turn out the way they want and what works for them.
Led by Kristjan, Evan, and the team, Farmer Coach provides customized coaching for farmers, focusing on financial management, strategic planning, marketing, and operational efficiency. Kristjan says it's all about embracing a business mindset, prioritizing time off, and proactively resolving issues. The platform aims to create a safe space for farmers to collaborate and learn from each other, but it's so much more than that.
I would say Farmer Coach is more of your mindset to want to run your farm like a business, not like a way of life. It's like, the quote on that is you run your farm like a way of life. It can be a pretty bad business. You run it like a business and it can be a pretty great way of life. And so it's that mindset of really starting to implement business processes and value time off with your spouse and kids and really solve issues weekly instead of letting them manifest to the point where it becomes a problem, whether that be in your cash or in your mental health or in your relationships. And so it's that mindset that really defines a Farmer Coach participant, not their crops or their size.
Recognizing the importance of policy in farming, Kristjan also actively promotes sustainable practices in agriculture. He emphasizes the need for farmers to share their success stories and showcase climate-smart practices. Regenerative agriculture practices like cover crops and no-till farming help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve soil health, and sequester carbon in the soil, amongst other things. And these practices will be amongst some of the top discussions going on at the upcoming COP28, the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference. World leaders, scientists, academia, activists, and farmers will gather together to address climate change and focus on ways to reduce emissions while promoting sustainability. This conference is truly one of a kind and will take place this year in Dubai, where Kristjan and many other farmers will be taking center stage to help highlight farming's positive contributions. Global Farmer Network will also have a presence and be partnering with CropLife International to help share the story of agriculture. Through CropLife International's Ask a Farmer campaign, Attendees will be asked to reflect upon the role farmers play in the climate change discussion, as well as many other important topics to today's current global environment. But ultimately, the message remains to ask a farmer and see how they can be part of the solution. And Kristjan certainly sees agriculture as part of that solution.
It actually started with a lot of the I should say agriculture, because I think a lot of people think we're talking about eggs all the time. But so the agriculture technology areas, and then obviously Farmer Coach and Evan and I being out there speaking about farm management is probably what led to it. Don't get me wrong, we pick up a few haters talking about it too, because agriculture doesn't always like change. But at the same time, we think there's a lot more wins. And that's really what kind of went down the path. We ended up in a pilot project with some of the larger players in the agriculture industry in Canada, RBC and McCain's and Laws and Nutrien and the federal government, obviously, on sustainability and this theory of sustainability being tied to both the land and the financial statements. I mean, I always tell them it's real tough to go green if I'm in the red. So I spend a lot of time kind of talking about that. We got a fairly big project going on it right now with the Canadian Alliance for Net Zero Agriculture to hopefully guide federal policy. I always say that policy is my number one risk on my farm. And so we're trying to at least be leaders in that area and vocal on policy to either ensure bad policy doesn't happen, or if a version of it is going to happen, we have some influence on it. So I'll be talking on panels, with people like probably the Premier of Saskatchewan or the CEO of Nutrien or those types of companies on all the great things agriculture is already doing on the sustainability path. I think there's been a lot of media try and paint, agriculture is the villain, whether that be in fertilizer emissions or cow farts, right? And yet there's so many things that agriculture is doing a great job of, especially in Canada and in North America, that we're leading the world in, that we haven't told that story. And we can't expect the companies and the politicians to tell that story. Farmers have to. I mean, I think it goes right back to kind of Global Farmer Network's theory, right? So that, I'll be speaking on sustainable farming practices and what leading farms in the world, which many of them are in North America, are already doing, and that agriculture should be looked at as the solution that they're looking for, not the villain, the solution, and we should be partnering to get it there.
And don't forget, if you're on the ground in Dubai at COP28, be sure to use the hashtag #AskAFarmer. While farmers strive for sustainability, Kristjan explains how essential it is to ensure a level playing field for all participants. Achieving sustainability in agriculture requires global accountability, the use of data-driven approaches, and the development of both global theories and regional strategies, which will be part of the discussion he has to share at COP28.
As a global society, we need to understand that unless we're going to hold everybody accountable to the same rules, I mean, it's probably a waste of time, right? I mean, there's a lot of, I'll use Canada as an example. I mean, our emissions as a percentage of the US, of China, of Russia are minuscule. And so we really can't make a big difference. Now, should we want to make a difference? Absolutely. Farmers want to be more sustainable all the time, but we have to find a way to make sure that everybody's playing the same game. Secondly, I think we need to use data in our favor. And I mean, how do we have an emissions scorecard, not only for farms, but also for, married couple with 2 kids living in downtown Toronto or downtown New York that have a condo and don't have any green matter anywhere sequestering? All they do is emit, right? Every part of their life, whether it be their car or their heat or their clothing, they have no way to sequester at all, or at least farms are sequestering some, if not being positive. So I think we need to get everybody on the same playing field in a scorecard. But then thirdly, you're right, we need science and data to show which practices are actually meeting emissions targets, but at the same time, not hindering profitability. Because there isn't enough margin in agriculture for farmers, to just change everything that everybody wants them to change, especially if there isn't enough data and science to show that it works. And that leads me to my, I always say we need global theory and regional strategies, right? Like, good buddies in Brazil have to have cover crops. I mean, their soil blows away otherwise. I mean, the best time for me to have a cover crop, I have 8 feet of frost and 3 feet of snow. It doesn't work really good to have a cover crop. So it's very important that we ensure policymakers understand that a farm in Southeast Saskatchewan is not the same as a farm in Iowa, is not the same as a farm in Kansas, is not the same as a farm in Brazil or Europe. And so we can have global theory, but we need to have regional strategies that are actually, implementable by each operation.
What a great episode. And don't forget to use that hashtag #AskAFarmer at COP28. If you're interested in learning more about the Global Farmer Network's mission and its members, seeing some of the things the organization is doing, and finding out how you can get involved, please visit globalfarmernetwork.org. And if you'd like to support the Global Farmer Network through a donation, you can do so at globalfarmernetwork.org/donate. If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, please be sure to subscribe and follow the Global Farmer Network on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Delaney Howell, and this has been the Global Farmer Voices podcast.